Good morning, students. Welcome back to online biology classes. As we have completed chapter number 2, the flower, today we are going to begin with a new chapter, that is the cell. Before starting with the chapter, we should know something about cell. What is a cell and what is the function of the cell? So what is a cell? All the living beings, whether plants or animals, are made up of cells. So all the living beings on this earth, whether they are plants, animals, insects, microorganisms, whatever, they all are made up of cells. Now, definition of the cell is: a cell is the base, structural and functional unit of a living organism. Now, if we look in the definition, there are two words given over here: structural and functional. The term structural over here is used because cell of same structure. There are many group of cells of same structure. They perform a particular and similar function. We will study different shapes of cell in this lesson later on, and then it will be more clear with you. All the functions of the body which are performed, it is due to the cell. Any function performed by a living organism is due to the activity of the cell in its body. For example, the cells at the tip of the root help in absorbing water for the plant. So, plant is having cell. The root, which is a part of a plant, the tip of the root are having cells. And what is the function of those cells which are on the tip of the root? The function of those cells is to absorb water for the plant. The cells in the leaves, which contain chlorophyll, prepare food by utilizing sunlight, carbon dioxide and water. Now, as we know that plants prepare their own food by the help of sunlight, and there are cells in the leaves which contain chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is a green color pigment which help in absorption of light. So there are cells on the leaves as well which help to prepare food for the plant. Similarly, an animal can move because of the ability of muscle cells to contract or relax. How an animal or human being move? We move because in our hand or in our legs we are having muscle cells. When all the muscle cells combine together, they help in the movement of the living organism. So this is about a cell. Why are cells called the building blocks of life? A cell can live independently on its own and perform all the life processes. That is why cells are called building blocks of life. This means that even a single cell can survive on its own. For example, bacteria. Bacteria is a microorganism which is having a single cell. They are called unicellular, and all the functions in a bacteria's body are performed by that single cell. So a cell can live independently as well. And living independently, a cell can perform all the functions of the body throughout the life. That is why cell is called building blocks of life. Without cell, there will be no life. Discovery of the cell. Cells were not discovered until the invention of the microscope. Cells are very, very tiny. You cannot see a cell with your naked eye. You need a microscope to observe a cell. So, without the invention of microscope, the existence of cell was impossible. So, after the microscope was discovered, then the cell was discovered. The Dutch scientist Anton van Leeuwenhoek developed the first simple microscope. So there was a Dutch scientist who developed a simple microscope, and this microscope is called simple microscope because it was made up of a single lens or only one lens. By the help of this microscope, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, he observed blood cells in the capillaries of the webbed foot of a frog. He took some sample of blood from a foot of a frog, and he observed that blood sample under his simple microscope. He also observed tiny single-celled organism in a drop of water. After observing the cells in the blood sample of a frog's foot, he again observed some water, a sample of water in a drop of water, and what he observed in that drop of water, there were some single-celled organisms, just like bacteria. Leeuwenhoek was the first to recognize these organisms as living unit of living beings. He did not call them as cell. So till here Leeuwenhoek observed that there are some living units in the living beings, but he did not term them as cell. After that, another English scientist whose name was Robert Hooke, he used to devise a compound microscope. Then he discovered a compound microscope, which is better than a simple microscope because it is having two lenses. He observed a thin slice of cork under his microscope and observed small box-like structures in it. Now what Robert Hooke did, he took some sample of cork. What is a cork now? It is the outer layer of the bark of a tree trunk. If you know, it is woody in nature, and he scraped out some sample of cork from a bark of the tree, and then he observed that cork sample under his compound microscope. Then he saw that there are some small box-like structures in it, and he called them cells. So So who gave the term cell? Robert Hooke. The word cell is derived from the Latin word cellula, meaning small compartment. Thus, cell was discovered and named for the first time by Robert Hooke in 1665. Cork is obtained from the bark of a tree. It is made up of cells which were once living. So this scientist Robert Hooke, he actually observed dead cells. Why dead cells? Because when he took out that sample of bark, that cork sample from the bark of the tree, do you think the cells will be still living after getting detached from the living organism? No. So actually he observed dead cells. Diversity in cells, shape, size and number. There is a great variation in the number, shape and size of the cell in various organisms. For example, organisms such as bacteria are made up of single cell, whereas human beings are made up of billions and billions of cells. There are different types of cells that make up an organism. Shapes of cells. Now there are different shapes of cells. Cells show a lot of variation in shape. Multicellular organisms are made up of cells of different shapes depending on their function. Now this is what I was telling you. Cells of different shape, they work together for a particular function. Now various shapes of cell are as follows. The first is irregular shape. As the name is suggesting, irregular shape means the cell do not have a fixed shape. We cannot say that the cell is circular, cell is triangular, square, box like. We cannot say it what is the definite shape of the cell. So it is not having any fixed shape and are irregular. For example, amoeba and white blood cells. These two cells are irregular in shape. They can be of any shape. Next is oval shape. Example is Chlamydomonas, which is having an oval shaped body. Then comes oblong shape. Example is Paramecium. Then elongated shape. Example is muscle cells, which are elongated and contractile, that is, they become longer or shorter. This helps in the movement of bones. Then there is thread-like shape, and this thread-like shape is present in nerve cell, which are long and thread-like. Where are nerve cells present? They are present in your brain. Alright. Then size of cells. Most cells are microscopic. Their size is measured in micrometers or micron. 1 micron is equal to 1000 of a millimeter. The average cell size ranges from 3 to 30 micron. So you all must be having a scale with you. Observe your scale, and the smallest unit on the scale is millimeter. Now consider 1 millimeter and break that 1 millimeter, divide that 1 millimeter into 1000 times, and considering that 1000 parts of 1 millimeter, take one part of it. That much small is a cell. You cannot even imagine how small it is. Cell is measured in a unit which is called micron. So the average size of cell can be from 3 micron to 30 micron. The smallest cell are those of bacteria, which range from 0.2 to 0.5 micron in diameter. The smallest cell in human being are the red blood cells. A cell may be as long as 3 meters, such as the nerve cell of an elephant. So cell can be as small as a bacterial cell, 0.2 to 0.5 micron, or as long as 3 meters. 3 meters cell who is having? Elephant. Nerve cell of elephant. Number of cells. Now, some organisms are made up of a single cell, while some other are made up of many cells. So, organisms that are made up of single cell are called unicellular organisms. For example, bacteria, amoeba, paramecium and chlamydomonas. Whereas the organisms that are made up of many cells are called multicellular organisms, just like us. For example, plant, fishes, rose, mango, wheat, rice, animals, birds and human being are multicellular organisms. So thank you students, that is all for today's lesson. This chapter will be continued. Do revise the previous topics, clear your doubts if any, and have a good day.